Change is one of the few constants in life, yet for many of us it is also one of the greatest sources of fear. We crave stability because it makes us feel safe. We hold on to routines, habits, and even relationships not because they serve us well, but because they are familiar. When change approaches, whether it is a new job, moving to a different city, ending a relationship, or simply stepping outside of our comfort zone, our first instinct is often to resist. This resistance is deeply human. Our minds are wired to seek security and to avoid uncertainty. But if we let this instinct dominate our lives, we risk missing out on growth, new opportunities, and even our true potential. Ancient philosophy, and especially the teachings of the Stoics, offers us a powerful framework for facing change with courage and clarity. The Stoics lived in times of political upheaval, personal danger, and constant unpredictability. Yet they developed practices and ways of thinking that allowed them to remain calm and even thrive in the face of life's greatest disruptions. By studying their wisdom, we can learn to transform fear of change into acceptance and even into a source of strength. Imagine for a moment that you are standing at the edge of a vast forest. You know that on the other side lies a new life, a better one perhaps, full of growth and opportunity. Yet between you and that life is the unknown. The forest is dark, and you cannot see what dangers or challenges await you inside. This is what change often feels like. It is stepping into the forest without knowing what lies ahead. The fear you feel is natural, but it does not have to be paralyzing. The ancient philosophers understood that fear is not caused by the situation itself, but by our thoughts and interpretations of it. Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who began his life as a slave, taught that we do not control external events, only our judgments and responses to them. This insight is liberating because it means that while we cannot stop change from happening, we can change the way we experience it. Why do we fear change so deeply? Part of it is rooted in our survival instincts. For our ancestors, change often meant danger. A sudden shift in the environment could mean a new predator nearby or the loss of food sources. Even today, our brains interpret uncertainty as a potential threat. But there is also a deeper, more personal reason for our fear. Change challenges our identity. It forces us to confront who we are and who we might become. When we step into the unknown, we must let go of the familiar version of ourselves. This can be deeply unsettling. But it can also be the very thing that sets us free. The Stoics would advise us to view change not as a threat but as a natural part of life. Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher-emperor of Rome, wrote that everything in the universe is in a state of flux. He reminded himself daily that he too was part of this ever-changing flow. To resist change, he believed, was to resist life itself. This perspective invites us to shift our focus. Instead of asking why is this happening to me, we can ask what can I learn from this? Instead of seeing change as something to fear, we can begin to see it as an opportunity to grow in wisdom, resilience, and virtue. Another reason change feels frightening is that we overestimate how much control we actually have over life. We cling to the illusion that if we plan carefully, if we build strong enough walls around ourselves, we can prevent anything unexpected from happening. But as the Stoics remind us, control is largely an illusion. We cannot control the future. We cannot stop time. We cannot prevent loss. What we can control is how we respond. This is not resignation. It is empowerment. When we accept that change will come no matter what we do, we free ourselves from the exhausting and futile effort of trying to control the uncontrollable. If you are facing a major life change right now, take a moment to breathe. The fear you feel is not a sign that something is wrong. It is a sign that you are human. But it does not have to define you. Ancient philosophy invites you to pause, reflect, and step into change with wisdom. In the chapters ahead, we will explore practical ways to do this. We will draw on the timeless teachings of Stoics like Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, as well as insights from other ancient traditions. Together, these ideas will help you not only face change but embrace it as a necessary and even beautiful part of life. When we speak of fear of change, It is important to understand that at its core, this fear is the product of how we think. Change itself is not inherently frightening. It is neutral. It simply is. What gives it power over us is the meaning we attach to it. This is where Stoicism becomes incredibly practical. Epictetus taught that events are not what disturb us, but our judgments about those events. When you hear that your job role is changing, or that a relationship you have relied upon is coming to an end, your mind immediately creates a story. Perhaps you imagine failure, rejection, or loss. You might project into the future, imagining worst-case scenarios. But these are not facts. They are interpretations. The first step to overcoming the fear of change is to recognize that our emotional turmoil comes from these interpretations and to learn to challenge them. The Stoics used a practice called cognitive distancing, though they would not have used that modern term. Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself as though he were advising a friend. He would describe events in the most neutral, objective language possible. Instead of saying something terrible has happened, he might say simply that change has occurred. This stripped the event of its emotional weight and allowed him to see it for what it really was. You can practice the same technique. Instead of thinking I am losing everything, you can say I am entering a new phase of life. This does not deny the difficulty of the situation, but it reframes it. It removes the unnecessary suffering caused by catastrophic thinking. Seneca, another Stoic philosopher, often spoke about rehearsing adversity in the mind before it happened. He encouraged his students to imagine possible changes and challenges not as a way of dwelling on fear, but as a way of preparing for them. He wrote that fortune falls heavily on those for whom it is unexpected. When you expect change, when you accept that it is a natural and inevitable part of life, its impact is softened. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum or the premeditation of evils, trains the mind to view change with calm preparedness rather than shock or despair. You can begin this practice by setting aside time to reflect on what changes might come your way and how you might respond to them with wisdom and courage. This raises an important question. If change is inevitable, why do we resist it so much? The answer lies in our attachment to what is familiar. Human beings create identities around their current circumstances. We define ourselves by our jobs, our possessions, our relationships, even our routines. Change threatens these identities. It forces us to ask, who am I without this job, or who am I if my life looks different from what I imagined? This confrontation with the unknown self is unsettling. The Stoics understood this discomfort and offered a way through it. They taught that our true identity is not in the roles we play or the external things we possess, but in our rational and moral nature. Who you are is not determined by your job title, your status, or your possessions. It is determined by your character, by your ability to live according to reason and virtue. When you embrace this perspective, change loses its power to destroy your sense of self. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that all things in nature are temporary and constantly transforming. He compared life to a river in which nothing remains the same from one moment to the next. When we align ourselves with this truth, we no longer see change as an enemy. We see it as part of the natural order. To resist change is to resist the flow of life itself. This does not mean that we must welcome every change with joy. Some changes are painful, such as the loss of a loved one or the end of a cherished relationship. But the Stoics would encourage us to meet these changes with acceptance, recognizing that they are beyond our control, and to focus instead on cultivating inner strength and wisdom. Another powerful concept from Stoicism is the dichotomy of control. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us, and others are not. Our thoughts, our actions, our choices, these are within our control. The future, the past, the behavior of others, and the course of external events, these are not. When we fear change, it is often because we are trying to control what is outside our power. We want to guarantee that our future will be safe, predictable, and comfortable. But such guarantees do not exist. By accepting that we cannot control the course of events, we free ourselves from unnecessary anxiety. We can focus on what is within our power, how we think, how we respond, and how we live in alignment with our values no matter what changes around us. This way of thinking transforms change from something to be feared into an opportunity to practice virtue. Every change, no matter how disruptive, gives us a chance to strengthen our character. When we lose a job, we can practice resilience. When a relationship ends, we can practice gratitude for what it taught us and courage in moving forward. When life does not go as planned, we can practice wisdom by adjusting our expectations and seeking meaning in new circumstances. This is the essence of Stoic philosophy, using every experience, even the most challenging ones, as material for personal growth. As you reflect on these ideas, I encourage you to consider how you have viewed change in the past. Have you seen it as an enemy or as a teacher? Have you resisted it or sought to learn from it? The next sections of this exploration will offer even more tools and perspectives to help you navigate change with clarity and calm. But for now, I invite you to share your reflections in the comments. What is one change you have faced that shaped you in a meaningful way? Your insights may inspire others who are listening. And as always, I thank you for being part of this journey and invite you to point out any mistakes or areas for improvement so that we can make this content even more valuable together. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight." This is a profound reminder that what we often call loss is simply transformation. In modern life, this might be losing a job that you thought defined you. Perhaps you have worked for a company for 10 years, investing your time and energy, only to be told one day that the company is downsizing. It feels like the ground has been ripped from beneath you. But what if, instead of viewing it as the end of your stability, you reframed it as the beginning of a new path? Many people who have faced such changes later say that losing their job pushed them towards starting their own business or finding a career that better aligned with their values. Marcus Aurelius reminds us that such changes are not inherently bad. They are part of the natural unfolding of life. Seneca once said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." This quote has deep implications when it comes to our fear of change. Often, we waste time clinging to situations, people, or routines that no longer serve us simply because they are familiar. We fear what life will look like without them. Imagine someone who stays in an unfulfilling relationship for years because they are afraid of being alone. They tell themselves that it is easier to stay where they are than to face the unknown. But this is not living. This is existing in a state of quiet desperation. Seneca would challenge us to look at our lives honestly and ask whether we are truly making use of our time or simply avoiding discomfort. Another relevant teaching comes from Epictetus. Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it would, but rather wish that everything happens as it actually will, then your life will flow well. This principle is especially powerful in our modern age, where so many of us are taught to believe we can control every aspect of our lives. Social media shows us curated images of success and happiness, making us believe that if we just work hard enough, plan well enough, or manifest strongly enough, everything will go exactly as we want. But life does not work that way. A sudden illness can alter your plans. An economic downturn can change your financial situation overnight. Epictetus is not telling us to give up on our goals, but to align our expectations with reality. When we stop demanding that life conform to our desires, we free ourselves from the constant frustration and fear that come with unmet expectations. Let's bring this into a modern example. Consider someone planning their dream wedding. They envision a perfect day, sunshine, smiling guests, everything going according to schedule. But on the big day, it rains, the caterer is late, and a family argument breaks out. For many, this would ruin the day. But if you approach this with a Stoic mindset, you see these things as external, beyond your control. What is within your control? How you respond. You can choose to focus on the joy of marrying the person you love, regardless of the imperfections. In this way, Stoicism offers freedom from unnecessary suffering. Seneca also emphasized the value of rehearsing potential hardships. He suggested setting aside time to imagine losing what you value most, not to be morbid, but to build resilience. In his words, He robs present ills of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand. This practice, known as premeditatio malorum, is incredibly useful today. Think about how much anxiety we experience because we assume life will go smoothly. When the unexpected happens, a breakup, a sudden move, a financial loss, we are crushed, not only by the event itself but by our shock. By mentally rehearsing possible challenges, we lessen their emotional blow when they actually arrive. For example, if you are saving money for a house, you might also consider how you would handle a sudden medical expense. If you are in a relationship, reflect on how you would cope if it ended. This does not mean living in constant fear but cultivating preparedness. Another concept we must consider is detachment. Modern life encourages us to anchor our identity in external things, our careers, our possessions, even our online personas. When these change, we feel as if we are losing ourselves. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Your true self is not your job title, your car, or the number of likes on your social media posts. It is your character, your values, and how you respond to the challenges of life. When you embrace this truth, change becomes less threatening. It can take away the things you have, but it cannot take away who you are. Let's apply this to a contemporary situation. Imagine a professional athlete who suffers an injury that ends their career. Without Stoic wisdom, this person might spiral into despair, believing their life has lost meaning. But through Stoicism, they can reframe the situation. They may no longer play the sport they love, but they can use their experience to coach others, advocate for athletes' mental health, or pursue entirely new passions. Their identity shifts from being an athlete to being a mentor, advocate, or leader. The essence of who they are, their discipline, courage, and resilience, remains intact. In a world where rapid change is constant, new technologies, shifting social norms, global crises, these Stoic principles are more relevant than ever. They teach us that we cannot control the external storms, but we can anchor ourselves in the calm center of our own rational mind. By doing so, we transform change from something to fear into something to engage with thoughtfully, even courageously. As you think about these ideas, I encourage you to share in the comments how you personally have reframed a difficult change in your life. Did a challenge lead you to discover new strengths or opportunities? Your story could inspire someone else who is struggling with fear of change. And as always, I appreciate your patience with this content. If you want to truly overcome the fear of change, philosophy alone is not enough. It must be lived, practiced, and integrated into your daily routines. The Stoics were not interested in abstract theories that sounded good in conversation but did nothing to change how people actually lived. They developed practical exercises that could be applied every day to transform how we experience the world. Let's explore some of these powerful techniques and see how they can help you conquer your fear of change. The first practice is called premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. Seneca often wrote about imagining possible hardships before they occur, not to live in dread, but to build mental resilience. He said, "Rehearse death, exile, torture, all that can happen to a person. These things make us slaves of fortune, and anyone who has learned to scorn them becomes her master." In modern terms, this might look like taking time each morning to imagine what could go wrong in your day. What if you lose your job? What if a relationship ends? What if plans fall apart? By rehearsing these possibilities, you rob them of their power to paralyze you when they actually happen. For instance, if you are preparing for a big career change, spend time thinking about the worst possible outcomes. What if you fail? What if people criticize you? What if it doesn't work out? Then, instead of panicking, make a plan for how you would respond. This gives you a sense of control and makes the unknown less intimidating. The second practice is called the view from above. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on how small our problems are in the grand scheme of the universe. He wrote, "Observe always how ephemeral and worthless human things are. Pass then through this little space of time conformably to nature and end thy journey in contentment." When facing change, we tend to focus on how it affects us personally, often magnifying its importance. But when you imagine yourself rising above your life, seeing your challenges from the perspective of the whole planet, or even the whole cosmos, they shrink in size. For example, you might be anxious about moving to a new city. It feels overwhelming. But from the view from above, you see billions of people who have moved, adapted, and thrived. You realize that your situation, while significant to you, is part of a much larger human story. This shift in perspective calms the mind and reduces the fear of the unknown. Another powerful exercise is voluntary discomfort. The Stoics believe that regularly stepping outside your comfort zone prepares you for unexpected changes. Epictetus advised, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself the while, is this the condition that I feared? Today, you can practice voluntary discomfort by doing small things that challenge you, taking cold showers, skipping luxuries, or deliberately putting yourself in situations that make you slightly uncomfortable. If you fear losing your job, try living for a week on a reduced budget. If you fear being alone, spend intentional time by yourself without distractions. These exercises show you that you can endure more than you think, making big changes far less frightening. Journaling is another essential Stoic tool. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is, at its core, a personal journal. He wrote to himself daily, processing his emotions, reflecting on his principles, and preparing for challenges. When you write about your fears of change, you take them out of your mind and put them on paper, where they lose their grip on you. Try this. Each evening, write down the changes you are facing or anticipating. Ask yourself, what am I afraid of? What is within my control? What can I do right now to prepare? Over time, journaling builds clarity, helping you separate what you can control from what you cannot, a core Stoic practice. One more practice worth adopting is aligning with your values. When you are clear on your highest principles, change becomes less frightening because you know what truly matters. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. If your top value is integrity, then losing a job is less terrifying because your worth is not tied to your position, it is tied to how you conduct yourself. If your top value is family, then moving to another city is not simply a disruption but an opportunity to provide better for your loved ones. Identifying your values creates an inner compass that guides you through external changes with confidence and purpose. Let's tie this back to a modern scenario. Imagine someone going through a painful divorce. The fear of being alone, the loss of shared dreams, the uncertainty about the future, all of it feels overwhelming. Applying these Stoic practices, they first rehearse the possibilities. What does life look like after this divorce? How will I manage emotionally, financially, socially? They take the view from above, realizing that countless others have endured similar pain and rebuilt their lives. They practice voluntary discomfort, intentionally spending time alone to learn that solitude is survivable, even transformative. They journal daily, processing their emotions and developing a plan for their new life. And they align their actions with their core values, perhaps focusing on being a loving parent or an independent, authentic individual. Through these practices, the chaos of change becomes a training ground for growth, not a sentence of suffering. These exercises are not quick fixes. They require consistent practice and courage. But the more you engage with them, the less power fear has over you. Change stops being an enemy and becomes a teacher, showing you where you are still clinging too tightly, where you need to grow, and where your real strength lies. I encourage you to try one of these exercises today. Share in the comments which one resonates with you the most. Have you ever practiced voluntary discomfort? How did it impact your ability to handle real challenges? Your insights could help others who are also navigating fear and uncertainty. And as always, thank you for listening with an open mind. When we look at how Stoic philosophy applies to modern life, it can sometimes feel distant, as if it belongs only in dusty scrolls or the minds of Roman emperors. But the truth is that Stoic principles are alive and thriving in the lives of countless leaders, thinkers, and innovators today. These are people who faced enormous changes, some planned, others forced upon them, and instead of crumbling under fear, they leaned on wisdom remarkably similar to that of the Stoics. Take Nelson Mandela, for instance. Few lives embody the Stoic ideal of maintaining inner freedom amidst external chaos as fully as his. In prison for 27 years, he faced changes that would shatter most people: the loss of his freedom, the uncertainty of his future, the transformation of his country. Yet Mandela's response was deeply Stoic. He chose to control his attitude when he could not control his circumstances. This mirrors the teaching of Epictetus, who himself lived as a slave yet declared, "You may fetter my leg, but my will not even Zeus himself can overpower." Mandela transformed imprisonment into a school for his soul. He read, reflected, and prepared for the day when he could help guide South Africa toward reconciliation. His ability to embrace radical change without being consumed by bitterness demonstrates the power of Stoic resilience. In a very different sphere, consider Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor who authored Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl was not a Stoic, but his philosophy of life resonates strongly with Stoic thought. In the unimaginable chaos of a concentration camp, where change meant death or survival on a daily basis, he discovered that the one thing no one could take from him was his ability to choose his response. "Everything can be taken from a man but one thing," Frankl wrote, "the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." This is the heart of Stoicism. When change strips away everything familiar, we can still decide how to meet it, with despair or with dignity, with resistance or with acceptance. Moving into the modern corporate world, look at Steve Jobs. He famously said, "Remembering that you are going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose." This mindset echoes Marcus Aurelius, who often reminded himself of life's brevity to focus on what truly matters. Jobs faced a profound change when he was fired from the very company he created. For many, that would have been a devastating defeat. But instead, he described it as one of the best things that ever happened to him. He used the moment to explore new creative avenues, eventually returning to Apple and transforming it into one of the most influential companies in the world. Like a Stoic, Jobs reframed adversity as opportunity, proving that even painful changes can lead to profound growth. Athletes also embody Stoic resilience in the face of change. Consider Michael Jordan, often called the greatest basketball player of all time. After retiring from basketball at the peak of his career, he faced the monumental change of leaving behind an identity built over decades. Instead of clinging to the past, he embraced the uncertainty of a new chapter, trying his hand at baseball and later returning to basketball with renewed purpose. His story illustrates Seneca's wisdom: every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Jordan did not allow the fear of losing his status to stop him from evolving as a person and an athlete. Even in the realm of public service, we see Stoic principles at work. Take Angela Merkel, the former German chancellor. Known for her calm, measured approach, she guided her country through multiple crises: economic downturns, mass migration, and a global pandemic. Merkel often spoke about the importance of facing reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. This reflects the Stoic commitment to living in accordance with nature, which means accepting events without denial or distortion. Her ability to remain steady in the face of massive change became a source of stability for millions of people. These examples reveal an important truth: Stoicism is not about detachment from life but engagement with it, rooted in wisdom and resilience. Mandela did not passively accept imprisonment, he used it to prepare for leadership. Frankl did not deny his suffering, he found meaning in it. Jobs did not cling to the identity of a fallen CEO, he reinvented himself. Jordan did not let fear of failure stop him from pursuing new challenges. Merkel did not ignore crises, she faced them head-on with reason and calm. What do all these figures share? They practice the core Stoic skill of distinguishing what is in their control from what is not. They use the inevitability of change as fuel for growth rather than an excuse for despair. They found strength not in avoiding change but in mastering their responses to it. And you can do the same. Imagine applying this mindset to your own life. Perhaps you are facing a career transition, a breakup, or a major life decision. Instead of resisting change or being paralyzed by fear, you can emulate Mandela's inner freedom, Frankl's search for meaning, Jobs' reframing of setbacks, Jordan's courage to reinvent himself, and Merkel's calm acceptance of reality. These are not superhuman abilities. They are skills that can be cultivated with practice. Let this be a reminder that you are part of a long human tradition of resilience. When you look at the lives of these leaders, you see proof that fear of change can be transformed into a catalyst for greatness. Share in the comments, which of these stories resonates most with you? Have you faced a change in your own life that ultimately led to growth? Your reflections may inspire others who are wrestling with similar challenges. When it comes to facing change, the greatest barrier is often not the change itself but the fear we build around it. The Stoics recognized this 2,000 years ago. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." What he meant is that our minds create monsters out of uncertainty long before any actual danger appears. To overcome fear of change, then, requires both a shift in how we think and a deliberate practice of training ourselves to respond differently. Let us explore how we can build a Stoic approach to facing change, a plan that transforms fear into fuel for growth. The first step is to truly understand what is within your control and what is not. Epictetus taught that some things are up to us, and some things are not. If you are losing sleep over the possibility of losing your job, notice where your mind is dwelling. You cannot control the economic downturn or your company's decisions. But you can control how you prepare, how you improve your skills, and how you manage your emotions. Make a simple list. On one side, write everything about the situation you cannot control. On the other side, write what you can. This is a powerful exercise because it pulls your mind out of the swirling chaos of what-ifs and focuses it on concrete actions. The second step is reframing. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that events are not inherently good or bad. It is our judgment of them that gives them meaning. When facing a change, practice asking, what opportunity is hidden in this? Suppose you are moving to a new city for work. Your first instinct might be fear of leaving behind friends, of losing familiar routines. But reframing allows you to see the potential, new connections, new experiences, a chance to grow in ways you could not in your old environment. The Stoics call this using reason to guide your impressions rather than letting emotions run wild. It is not pretending that everything is perfect but seeing beyond the surface of fear. The third step is voluntary discomfort. This is one of the most misunderstood yet practical Stoic exercises. Seneca advised practicing poverty, not because he enjoyed suffering, but because he wanted to prove to himself that he could handle it. When we intentionally expose ourselves to mild discomfort, we become less fragile when real discomfort arrives. For example, if you fear financial instability, try living for a few days on a minimal budget. If you fear social change, intentionally place yourself in situations where you meet new people or navigate unfamiliar environments. Each time you do this, you tell your nervous system, I can handle this. Change feels less like an unpredictable storm and more like an expected challenge you are equipped for. The fourth step is negative visualization, premeditatio malorum, as the Stoics called it. This practice involves imagining possible obstacles and preparing your mind to face them with calm. Before a major change, ask yourself, what is the worst that could realistically happen? Then visualize how you would respond. If you are starting a new business, imagine it failing. What would you do? Perhaps you would find another job, lean on your network, or try again. This mental rehearsal removes some of the sting of uncertainty because you have already walked through the fire in your mind and survived. It is not pessimism, it is preparation. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The fifth step is creating daily rituals of reflection. The Stoics were journalers. Every evening, Marcus Aurelius wrote in his private notes about the day, what went well, what he could do better, and how to align himself more closely with virtue. You can do the same. Ask yourself, how did I face today's changes? What fears arose? Did I act with wisdom, courage, and self-control? Over time, this habit rewires your mind to see change as a natural part of life rather than a terrifying disruption. Your journal becomes a mirror that reflects your growth. Finally, surround yourself with people who embody the calm and resilience you wish to cultivate. Seneca advised us to keep company with those who lift us higher. If you fear change, spend time with those who see challenges as opportunities. Learn from their stories. Let their courage infect you. This is not just motivational advice. Neuroscience shows that we mirror the behaviors and emotional states of those around us. Choose companions who make you stronger, not those who amplify your fears. Through these steps, distinguishing what is in your control, reframing events, practicing voluntary discomfort, engaging in negative visualization, journaling, and surrounding yourself with resilient people, you can build an inner fortress. Changes will still come, often uninvited, but you will no longer meet them as a frightened victim. You will meet them as a prepared, thoughtful participant in your own life. Imagine implementing just one of these steps today. Perhaps you journal about a change you fear. Or you practice reframing by finding one hidden opportunity in an upcoming challenge. Small actions compound. They prepare you for bigger storms. Over time, you will notice something profound. The fear of change that once paralyzed you will transform into curiosity, even excitement, for what lies ahead. Which of these Stoic practices do you think would be most helpful for you right now? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your insights might help someone else facing the same fears. If fear of change is rooted in the unknown, then joy and gratitude are the antidotes that help us embrace it. The Stoics understood this deeply. They believed that happiness is not something to be chased but something cultivated within, independent of external events. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to receive without arrogance and let go without attachment, a way of living that turns every change, even the painful ones, into an opportunity for appreciation. To transform fear of change, we must learn to shift our emotional focus from loss to gratitude, from uncertainty to potential. Gratitude, for the Stoics, was not just a polite feeling. It was a radical act of seeing the world as it truly is, fleeting, fragile, and therefore precious. Epictetus would tell his students that everything we have is on loan from the universe, even our loved ones, our health, and our very lives. When we fear change, we often cling desperately to what we know. But gratitude loosens that grip. When you truly appreciate what you have right now, you understand that it was never guaranteed. You stop grasping at permanence and start cherishing the present moment. Consider a person facing retirement. They might fear the loss of identity, structure, and purpose. But reframing through gratitude changes the story. Instead of mourning the end of a career, they can thank life for the years of work, the lessons learned, and the opportunity to explore new paths. This shift doesn't erase the difficulty of the change, but it transforms the emotional landscape. Fear gives way to appreciation, and appreciation creates the courage to move forward. The Stoics also practiced a form of joy, not the fleeting pleasure of indulgence, but a deep, resilient joy that comes from living in alignment with nature and virtue. Seneca described this joy as a great and steady gladness, one that does not rise and fall with fortune's wheel. When you live according to your values, courage, wisdom, justice, self-control, no external change can rob you of your deepest source of happiness. In fact, change often becomes the arena in which those values are tested and strengthened. Take, for example, someone who fears moving to a new country. On the surface, it seems terrifying, leaving behind friends, culture, and comfort. But a Stoic reframes it as an opportunity to practice courage, to expand wisdom by learning from new people and environments, to practice justice by engaging with diverse communities, and to test self-control in moments of stress. Each of these challenges, once feared, now becomes a way to live out their values. And living out those values brings joy that no external comfort can match. Another powerful practice is the intentional celebration of small victories. When navigating change, our minds tend to focus on the overwhelming big picture. But joy comes from noticing and savoring small progress. Did you face a difficult conversation today? Celebrate it. Did you take one step toward embracing the change you fear? Acknowledge it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations that the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. Focusing on these small moments of growth rewires your emotional response to change, replacing dread with a quiet confidence. And let us not overlook the practice of memento mori, remembering that life is finite. To some, this seems dark, but the Stoics saw it as liberating. When you truly grasp that time is short, you stop delaying joy. You stop letting fear of change trap you in mediocrity. If today were your last day, would you cling to the safety of the familiar, or would you embrace the change that could lead to growth, connection, or deeper meaning? This perspective transforms fear into urgency, the urgency to live fully, right now. Gratitude journals, meditation on virtue, savoring small wins, these are not abstract ideas but daily tools for cultivating joy. Try this. At the end of each day, write down 3 things you are grateful for that day, especially related to changes you are experiencing. Maybe you learned something new, or someone showed you kindness, or you discovered a strength you didn't know you had. Over time, this trains your mind to see change not as a thief but as a giver of lessons, of resilience, of unexpected blessings. When you start to see change through the lens of gratitude and joy, fear loses its power. Change will still be uncertain. It will still stretch you. But instead of seeing it as a threat, you begin to see it as a gift of becoming more than you were yesterday. How do you practice gratitude during times of change? What small victories have you celebrated lately? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your experiences could inspire someone else walking a similar path. When we speak of fear of change, it often feels abstract, but in reality it manifests in concrete areas of life, our careers, our relationships, and our personal growth. These are the spaces where the lessons of Stoicism are tested and where they can transform fear into resilience. Let us start with the world of business and work, where change often comes with the greatest sense of uncertainty. A job loss, a career shift, or a sudden restructuring can feel like the collapse of the ground beneath our feet. But the Stoics would remind us that our true worth does not come from titles, salaries, or the approval of others. Epictetus insisted that our power lies in focusing on what is within our control, our attitude, our effort, and our choices, not the shifting fortunes of external circumstances. Imagine a person who has worked at the same company for 20 years, suddenly told that their role is being eliminated. The initial reaction is fear and grief, and understandably so. But through a Stoic lens, this moment becomes an opportunity to reclaim agency. Instead of fixating on what has been lost, they can ask, what is within my control right now? I can learn new skills. I can reach out to my network. I can treat this change as a turning point rather than an ending. This is not naive optimism. It is the practical application of Stoic discipline, seeing reality as it is and responding with courage. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it." The Stoic mindset turns even the fuel of adversity into light. In the realm of relationships, fear of change often arises when dynamics shift, a friendship cools, a breakup looms, or a loved one grows in a direction we cannot follow. It can be deeply painful. But here, too, the Stoics offer tools for resilience. They remind us that all relationships, like everything in life, are transient. When we fear change in relationships, it is often because we cling to an illusion of permanence. But when we practice gratitude for what the connection has given us and acceptance of its natural evolution, we can let go with grace rather than desperation. Seneca urged his readers to cherish people as if they could be gone tomorrow, not to breed sorrow, but to deepen appreciation. Take, for example, someone facing the end of a long-term relationship. Instead of drowning in resentment or nostalgia, a Stoic response would be to reflect on what the relationship taught them. Did it teach them patience, self-awareness, or compassion? Did it reveal what they truly value in a partner? This reframing allows the person to move forward with wisdom, transforming a painful ending into fertile ground for growth. The change remains hard, but it no longer defines them. On a personal level, fear of change often appears as resistance to growth. How many of us avoid pursuing a dream, starting a project, or moving to a new place because we are afraid of the unknown? The Stoics would see this fear as a signal, an invitation to examine our attachments. Epictetus said, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our judgments about them." If we label change as dangerous, we paralyze ourselves. But if we label it as an opportunity to practice courage and live more in line with our values, we set ourselves free. Consider the story of someone offered a job abroad. They are torn between the comfort of staying home and the fear of starting anew in a foreign land. Through a Stoic practice, they might write out the worst-case scenarios: loneliness, difficulty adapting, the challenge of building a new community, and then ask, are these truly unbearable? Often, when faced in the clear light of reason, the monsters under the bed shrink into manageable challenges. By breaking down the fear into specifics, it becomes something we can address piece by piece rather than an overwhelming shadow. Another powerful Stoic exercise is voluntary discomfort. Seneca recommended occasionally living as if you were poor, eating simple meals, wearing rough clothes, and asking yourself, is this what I feared? This practice inoculates us against the terror of loss. If we can practice embracing temporary discomfort, then sudden changes, financial struggles, lifestyle shifts, or career setbacks lose their power to crush us. We discover that we are stronger, more adaptable, and more resourceful than we imagined. In the modern context, think of entrepreneurs who risk leaving secure jobs to build something new. They embody this Stoic courage. They accept uncertainty, not because they are reckless, but because they recognize that growth lies on the other side of fear. They do not control the market or guarantee success, but they control their effort, their learning, and their response to setbacks. Whether they succeed or fail, they walk the path of courage, a path the Stoics would call virtuous. Change in business, relationships, or personal life is always unsettling, but the Stoic approach transforms it into an arena for practicing our highest values: courage, wisdom, justice, self-control. When these virtues guide our response, fear of change becomes not a wall but a doorway. What changes in your life are you facing now? How might a Stoic mindset help you navigate them? Share your reflections in the comments. Your insights could help someone else on their journey. At the heart of the fear of change lies a deeper philosophical struggle, one that the Stoics understood well. It is the tension between what is within our control and what is not. Epictetus opened his famous Enchiridion with this truth: some things are up to us and some are not. This is more than a simple observation. It is the cornerstone of a life lived with clarity and courage. The fear of change often arises when we cling to things outside of our control: the opinions of others, the permanence of circumstances, the guarantee of comfort. When those illusions are stripped away, we feel exposed and vulnerable. But the Stoics teach us that freedom begins when we shift our focus inward, toward the realm of our thoughts, our choices, and our moral character. This philosophical lens is liberating. Imagine you are facing a career transition you did not choose. The instinct is to panic, to resist, to fight against the current. But pause and apply Epictetus's distinction. What is within your control? Your effort to learn new skills, your openness to new opportunities, your attitude toward the uncertainty. What is not within your control? The decisions of the company, the economy, the judgments of others. By consciously separating the two, the storm of change becomes less overwhelming. You cannot stop the waves, but you can learn to steer the ship. Marcus Aurelius deepened this idea by reminding himself daily that change is not only inevitable but also natural. Observe constantly that all things take place by change, he wrote in his Meditations. The universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are, and to make new things like them. In other words, resisting change is like resisting the flow of life itself. The Stoics did not seek to escape this flow but to align themselves with it. This is what they meant by living according to nature. Change is not a disruption. It is the rhythm of existence. But how do we translate this lofty idea into practical action when our emotions are screaming in protest? One approach is cognitive reframing. When we see change as a threat, our bodies respond with anxiety and resistance. But if we deliberately reframe it as a teacher, a guide, or even a necessary test of our strength, we engage with it differently. Think of a person moving to a new city against their will. They could see it as exile, a narrative of loss and resentment. Or they could see it as an adventure, a chance to grow in resilience, to meet new people, to discover parts of themselves they had yet to explore. The external change is the same, but the inner narrative transforms fear into an opportunity for growth. Seneca offered another profound tool for addressing the fear of change, premeditatio malorum, or the premeditation of evils. He advised his students to regularly visualize the things they feared most. Not to wallow in misery, but to rob these fears of their power. He robs presentiles of their power who has perceived their coming beforehand, Seneca wrote. Imagine someone terrified of losing their home. In practicing this Stoic exercise, they would imagine life without that home, living with less comfort, perhaps even relying on the kindness of others. And then they would ask, can I endure this? The answer is almost always yes. This practice does not make us pessimists. It makes us prepared. Modern psychology echoes this wisdom. Exposure therapy, often used to treat phobias, rests on a similar principle. By gradually confronting what we fear, we diminish its hold on us. The Stoics were practicing this mental resilience 2,000 years ago. They knew that fear thrives in avoidance, but shrinks in the light of deliberate engagement. Another layer of Stoic wisdom lies in understanding the impermanence of all things. Much of our fear of change comes from our attachment to the illusion of stability. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that both the people and the situations he loved would one day pass away. Far from breeding despair, this perspective deepened his gratitude for the present. When we embrace the transience of life, change no longer feels like an enemy. It becomes a constant companion, teaching us to savor what we have while it is here, and to release it when the time comes. Consider how this plays out in personal relationships. A parent watching their child grow up may grieve the loss of their little one. But through the Stoic lens, this change is natural, beautiful even. The role of the parent evolves. The child becomes their own person. Instead of clinging to the past, the parent can appreciate the new form of the relationship, finding joy in witnessing the unfolding of a life they helped nurture. Ultimately, the fear of change challenges us to confront our deepest philosophical questions. Who am I when the familiar is stripped away? What remains when titles, possessions, or relationships shift? The Stoics would answer, you are your character, your choices, your virtue. These are unshakable even in the wildest storms. This is why Marcus Aurelius could write, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. In embracing this truth, we move from fear to freedom. Change becomes not an enemy but an ally, shaping us into wiser, stronger, more compassionate beings. What changes have shaped you the most? How did they transform your character? Share your reflections in the comments. Your story might inspire someone else facing their own crossroads. If there is one message the Stoics would want us to remember about change, it is this: it is not the change itself that harms us, but the stories we tell ourselves about it. Epictetus taught that people are disturbed not by things, but by the views they take of them. This single idea is transformative. Change may arrive suddenly, like an unexpected storm, but whether we drown or find our way to shore depends on how we choose to interpret and respond to it. Let us imagine two people experiencing the same upheaval, the sudden loss of a job. One sees it as proof of their inadequacy, an end to stability, a catastrophe beyond repair. They sink into despair. The other sees it as painful, yes, but also as an opportunity, a chance to reassess their priorities, to explore new paths they have been too afraid to consider before. They begin to take small steps, learning new skills, seeking help, and building a different future. The external event is identical, but the inner narrative shapes entirely different outcomes. This is the power of the Stoic mindset. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself to greet each challenge with this simple thought: this too is for the good of the universe. To a modern reader, this may sound distant or abstract, but consider its implications. It is a practice of radical acceptance, of seeing life as a series of lessons and opportunities, not as a series of accidents and injustices. When we view change through this lens, even the hardest moments become meaningful. They are not random punishments. They are invitations to grow. Seneca, in his letters, offered a beautiful metaphor: life is like a play, and we do not choose our roles for how long we are on stage. But we do choose how well we perform our part. This analogy strikes at the heart of the fear of change. Roles will shift. Scenes will end. But the integrity of our performance, the courage, kindness, and wisdom with which we live, remains in our hands. In this way, the Stoics teach us to make peace with impermanence and to find dignity even in loss. How can we bring these ideas into our everyday lives? Begin with small practices. When fear of change arises, pause. Breathe deeply. Name what you are feeling without judgment. Ask yourself, what part of this is within my control? What part is beyond it? Focus your energy on what you can influence and release the rest. This single act of discernment reduces the chaos of change into manageable steps. Another practice is gratitude. It may sound counterintuitive to be thankful in the midst of upheaval, but gratitude grounds us. It reminds us of what remains steady even as the world shifts. Marcus Aurelius often wrote lists of things he was grateful for: the wisdom of his teachers, the loyalty of his friends, the beauty of nature. In doing so, he trained his mind to see abundance, not scarcity. You can do the same. Each day, write down 3 things you are grateful for, no matter how small. This shifts your focus from what is being taken to what is still present. Seek community. The Stoics did not live in isolation. They sought counsel, learned from teachers, and shared their insights with others. Change is easier to bear when shared. Reach out to friends, mentors, or support groups. Discuss your fears openly. Sometimes simply voicing our struggles reduces their weight. Lastly, practice the art of perspective. When facing a difficult change, zoom out. Will this matter in a year? 5 years? Often, what feels unbearable in the moment becomes a small chapter in a much larger story. Seneca wrote that, "Time heals what reason cannot." Perspective reminds us that no feeling, no situation, no season of change lasts forever. As we draw this journey to a close, let us reflect. Change is not the enemy. It is the constant companion of life. To fear it is to fight the very nature of existence. But to accept it, to meet it with courage and wisdom, is to live fully. The Stoics give us a blueprint: control what you can, release what you cannot, practice gratitude, and embrace the flow of life with dignity. What changes are you facing now? How might you approach them differently through the lens of Stoic wisdom? Share your thoughts in the comments. Your reflections may offer hope and guidance to someone walking a similar path. Thank you for joining me on this exploration. I hope these ancient insights bring you strength as you navigate the unknown.